This episode is brought to you by Celltech MD, the leader in regenerative medicine, balancing your body from the inside out. What's up, everybody? This is your friendly neighborhood Gym Gypsy, Justin, and I am here with IFBB Pro Olympian, not just any Olympian, top 5 Olympian, 7 pro wins, including 3rd place at the Arnold Classic, a man that has competed for well over 20 years competitively in bodybuilding. I don't know if I can talk you up anymore, but I'm super excited to have you on here. But Toney Freeman, guys, known as the X-Man. How are you doing today, man?
Doing very well, bro. Happy to be here.
Yeah, man. We are in the headquarters of Celltech MD in Atlanta, Georgia, and we wanted to come on here on this beautiful Sunday and talk about a bunch of stuff, lots of bodybuilding. We've actually got some current events that we're going to talk about. We just recently had the Texas Pro.
Yep.
And definitely want to talk about that. But give these people a little bit of information about you, maybe if they haven't been following bodybuilding for the last 30 years. You know, a lot of the people that listen to this, we have kind of a broad spectrum, right? I bring in people from the fitness industry, from CrossFit, weightlifting, powerlifting, MMA, wrestling, everything. So a lot of the people are going to know you, but some of the listeners may not.
Excellent. Started bodybuilding in 1988. Did my first show in 89. My first NPC show in what was that, 90? And I've been around since, I think the NPC started in like 86 or 84 or something like that. So I've been around like since the beginning, went through all the eras.
I was going to say, you're one of the few people that can say that they've kind of competed through like 3 different eras.
Yeah, 3 different eras. Like, it's just been a cool ride to, be a skinny 6'2", 199-pound heavyweight. And still
199 pounds is light for its 6'2".
Well,
like, you don't think about it. Like,
the cutoff is 198.25. So I would have been a light heavy, except for that 3/4 of a pound.
You couldn't have spit into a cup or something, or?
Oh, trust me, I did everything I could to be in the heavyweight class. And then eventually I started putting on size, so it was really cool. When I first started lifting, I didn't have any bodybuilding aspirations. I just was so skinny. I was 161 pounds. I just wanted to be 200 pounds. And so when I got to 200, I was just hanging out there, competing and all that. But 91, I got with a friend of mine, Harold Hogue, and he trained me, and we put on about 60 pounds in a few months. And that's when I really got the bug.
Did you, now during this time, and I'm sure we'll talk about this a little bit because I definitely want to talk about the difference between then and there. How old were you at this time?
21.
Okay, so yeah, you're young. Were you natural at that time?
Yeah.
When you first started?
Yeah, when I first started. Yep. 91 is when I, started dabbling.
And you put on 60 pounds in how long?
My first cycle, I gained like 65 pounds in about 12 weeks, a little bit less. It was insane, bro. Like, my skin was like ripping.
That's when we talk about like hyper responders or like genetics. Like, that's that,
Well, when you're natural and then you first go on enhancement, you have your endocrine system and then you have the enhancement. So you can, and I'm talking to these young bucks, you can get away with using tiny amounts. I mean, I'm not even ashamed to tell my first cycle. I actually got my stuff from the doctor. I was dating this nurse and she hooked me up. So I was doing 1 cc of test, 1 cc of Deca, and 50 milligrams of Anadrol. That was my first cycle.
You can get Anadrol from the doctor back then?
Yes, it was.
That's interesting.
Those Syntex 2902s, if the old school people know what I'm talking about. And I literally just, it was weird because, I had been lifting for 3 or 4 years. And, I put on 40 pounds, so I was like, I don't think I can get no bigger than that. And then we started, and then he showed me how to eat food with it because, my diet when I first started was Wendy's, basically. Wendy's and metrics.
It sounds amazing.
I had a double cheese.
Oh, I remember the metrics.
Yeah.
The food, like it was the vitamins with the food. Yeah, it was 2 packets or whatever. That was like groundbreaking back then, man.
The original metrics and the original creatine is definitely not available anymore. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that stuff really, like...
Is Metrics even a company anymore?
It may or may not be, but like whatever they put in it, I mean, I don't know what it was. It was like it was powdered muscle.
Yeah,
but I'm just saying, like
they're putting D-ball in it.
If you ask Dexter's first 5 years of bodybuilding, he was a metric. We was all metrics heads because that's literally it put on muscle like nothing else.
Yeah. Didn't work for me. I'm not a hyper responder. Although I didn't get, so we're talking about first cycles or whatever. I never did anything my entire life until I was in my 30s when I started competing much late. But I did when I was a teenager, like 17. There was a guy in the gym and got me something. I had no idea what it was. It was a friend of mine that literally told me, "Hey, take this. Give me $100." And it was DECA is what it was. But I didn't know anything better. I didn't know that you needed to take testosterone with it. I didn't know how much to take. I didn't take like a cycle. It was like those little, you remember the glass, whatever they're called, ampules or whatever. Yeah. And like, I think I broke it. I think I cut myself when I did it. So it's a different world. Oh no. Oh, that's all my money. It's all my gains. Yeah. But I do remember that I just blew up and I got puffy on it. And that's all that, that's all that happened. So,
like I say, when you first start, you have your whole endocrine system plus whatever you put on top of it. So it's like a double whammy, and you never really get that same response again. And so that's why I try to tell people start off super, super slow and give yourself some place to go next. You know what I'm saying?
Sade said it best. It's never as good as the first time.
Exactly.
So you started out 21, you gained a lot of muscle. I guess at this time your coach probably realized like, holy crap, we've got something different from like a regular person. Yeah. Because anybody that's like worth their salt will be able to see how quickly somebody responds. And did he push you to compete, or was it something that you wanted to do? Or
like I said, I was already competing. I had already had almost 5 years under my belt before I did any enhancement. Mm-hmm. And then so what really woke me up was I did the Junior USA, which was AAU at the time. And that's when I first ran into some real bodybuilders. And that just made me step back and say, whoa, this is not I had been playing around.
Big fish in a little pond.
I would see a poster saying it's a show, and then I would just do the show without no prep or nothing. So when I went there, I got very humbled. And they told me, I learned a lot just sitting around talking to the guys. And they were talking about, what you require to be competitive in the sport. They said your legs got to be at least 28 inches. And I went back to the gym the next day and measured my legs. They was like 25. I was like, whoa, I got a long way to go.
3 to go.
Yeah, I have a long
3 inches is a lot, guys. 3 inches is a lot.
3 inches is a lot. And I, as a young kid, I used to walk a lot and ride my bike. So I think that prepared me for the torture and the pain, and being able to train legs with that super high intensity, high volume, to actually get them to respond. Being a tall person is definitely not easy to build your legs.
Yeah, it's definitely a setback as far as putting size on. I mean, I guess the length of your femurs especially. Mm-hmm. But being tall in the sport, if you can fill out, which I want to talk about a little bit, because it seems like a lot of the taller guys, it's becoming more of a taller sport again, especially in the classic division or whatever. So, but you came up in a time when, like, let's say your best placing was Olympia in 08. Is that right? And you only came back, it was like what, Dexter, Jay, would have been Phil, and then who, Dennis Wolf or James?
Dennis Wolf.
Wolf, yeah. So you only lost to those 4 guys. Yeah. Those were not tall guys, with the exception of maybe Dennis.
Well, Dennis, they paired me and Dennis up, and that show, they was like, they came backstage after I did my prejudging routine. And then the night show, they was like, "Oh, you either won or got 5th," and I'm just like,
"That doesn't make any sense."
Like, what?
You either won or you're dead last. It sounds like somebody. It sounds like a weatherman. It's like it's either gonna rain or it's not.
Yeah, it was a trip, and that kind of blew my mind, because I knew I really couldn't get any better than because I literally actually peaked. I peaked like at the bottom of the stairs, getting ready to walk on stage. That's the first time I ever peaked on stage. And
so explain that to people, because a lot of people were like, "What do you peak? Was he on drugs? Like, what is he talking about?" Like, well, I mean, not
when you're in prep, you didn't prep for how many ever weeks. That year I did every show. So I started at the Arnold that year, and I did every single pro show all the way up until
which nobody does anymore.
Yeah, nobody does that. And so the whole idea is you get to a certain point where you can't get no better, and then it gets worse from there. So They call it peak. What we're trying to do, and that's why they call it peak week. What you're trying to do is nail your conditioning in the moment that you're on stage to be judged. You know, because a lot of people peak, you know, in the bathroom, at the hotel room, or in the restaurant after the show, and you know, it's a feeling, and I had experienced it a couple times before, just not on stage. So I always tell people to say, well, what does it feel like? I said, well, it feels like a total body erection. It's an involuntary total body erection. Like you're standing there, you've pumped up, and then they're announcing your name, then the adrenaline hits you, and then everything just comes together, and it was mind-boggling.
I feel like we're gonna have to change the name of this podcast to like the Erection Podcast, because it seems like every single time I have a guest on, we end up talking about erections in some way, shape, or form.
Oh wow!
We had Nick on, and we were talking about quality of erections. And we were talking about concrete penises and everything else. So yeah, that's hilarious. So full body erection, that needs to come on a shirt. Like you need to put that on a shirt.
Well, that's exactly what it feels like.
We're going to talk after this podcast.
And there's a few people out there that will know what I'm saying.
Absolutely,
and it's almost indescribable, but that's the closest thing I can think of to what it really feels like.
Yeah, you're just tight. You feel full. You know, everything is hard. You're warm as well. Like
it's a wave of endorphins. So you have a mental feeling. And it goes from like from the bottom of your feet to the top of your head. Every single muscle is engaged and full of glycogen and ready to go. And it lasts maybe an hour if you're lucky, and then it just goes away. And you feel it when it goes away. It's pretty wild.
So, but being that, like, did you find that in that era that you were, I guess, not penalized for being too tall? Or you know, tall, but do you feel like you got more of looks back then, or did you feel like you were just competing against, because like that was in the mass monster era still. I mean, you had like Jay, and then before that Ronnie and all this other kind of stuff. So you had these guys that were, you know, anywhere between 5'7" and 5'10" that were, you know, close to your body weight. They didn't weigh as much as you, but they looked like they weighed more than you just because it's a smaller frame. So did you feel the push to get, you know, bigger? Because I mean, you were near 300 on stage, right?
Yeah, the heaviest I ever been on stage was 293, and that was 2009, and I peaked at about 87 or 88, and that was the year I bust my bursa sac on the way to the athletes meeting, and that's the best I ever looked. But nobody got to see it but me and a couple of people that was helping me out. It was freaking nuts, bro. Yeah, because I learned so much from the year before. And I didn't do quite as many shows, so I was fresher. And I remember walking into the athletes meeting, and this is before I bust my bursa sac. And Jim, I walked past Jim. He was standing at the door, and he was like, "Damn, Tony, how much you weigh?" And I was like 293, and his eyes got big like that. And so that was something that I really wish I could have brought to the stage.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough looking back at that and realizing like it's such a short window and it's so difficult, and a lot of people that aren't in the sport don't understand it. But I mean, you have coaches, you know, these gurus out here that, I mean, they're the best there is, and they still miss the mark. You know, so when someone hits it, like when you say like, oh, can so-and-so hit so-and-so, or can so-and-so beat so-and-so? Well, if he comes in right, if he peaks right, then he can beat him. But there's all these ifs when we start talking about bodybuilding. And like, you can't ever, like if you make a prediction, like who's going to win the Olympia? Well, you could probably make the prediction assuming everyone comes in perfect. You know who genetically is there, right? But that never happens. You almost always have one person that you expect is going to be really good, and they just completely blow it for whatever reason.
I truly believe that, you know, because when someone nails it, everyone in the building knows. If you go to 87. If you go to 2007 Olympia, Victor nailed it.
Yeah, that's one that they talk about a lot.
Everybody said he could have beat Jay. Jay could have been a better bodybuilder, but Victor literally nailed it. I mean, I remember seeing Victor before prejudging even started. I saw him from like 50 yards away, and I was like, damn, when I got right up on him, I was like, I said, congratulations, you won. You know what I'm saying? Because I knew that no one, it's almost like how the world works. Like, no, it would not be two people in the same space and time that nailed it. You know what
Yeah,
I'm saying? Somebody's going to nail it and somebody's going to be slightly off.
It's like lightning striking.
Yeah. So Victor nailed it. I feel like he should have won in 07. I think most people do.
Yeah, that's one of those ones that if anybody follows bodybuilding, that comes up a lot. Like, you know, I mean, and then what's the other one when Arnold, I think in 80 or whatever, said, you know, he shouldn't have. But those are the two biggest upsets where people felt as though pretty much unanimously, yeah, like that probably shouldn't have gone that way.
Flex Wheeler, 93. Dorian Yates, 93. Lee Haney, 91. Olympia. All those, that was the best you've ever seen them before and since.
Yeah.
And so it's a very rare. Lee Haney told me himself, I've only peaked at one show, and that was my last show. And it was funny because I was at that show, sitting on the third row, and the prejudging was pretty close. You had Vince Taylor and Dorian Yates was in there. And so Lee went last, and everybody posed, and man, Vince looked amazing. Dorian looked amazing. And then it was Lee's turn. They said, ladies and gentlemen, Lee Haney. And the stage was one of those spin around stages.
Yeah.
So they spun him around.
They
And
still do that overseas, but they don't do
As soon as you saw him, it was like, oh, it's over.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And he was like, yeah, I peaked, you know, at that show, at the finals.
Do you think that's why he left? Because he was so young. What was he?
31.
Was he 30? Yeah, 30,
Yeah.
early 30s
Well,
when he left.
So he's similar to me. Lee Haney knew he was the best, right? And so he wasn't about to push the envelope and chase someone else when you should be chasing me. And I think, you know, politically, since he tied Arnold's record, and you saw when Ronnie tied Arnold's record, I just think they wanted to keep it, you know, 8 Mr. Olympias, unless you just came in and just destroyed everyone. So, and so far that's been the case. If you remember, they asked Ronnie, you know, you got 8 Mr. Olympias. If you win, are you going to retire? He was like, hell no, I'm going to ride it till the wheels fall off. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I just think that the business side of the sport tries to control that. And I think that's what happened to Lee. And so he was just like, I'm not going to, you know, chase Dorian, because that's pretty much who was coming next.
Yeah.
And so he decided to buy out with 8.
So you think he was kind of saw where the sport was going, I guess, maybe. You know, back then you kind of had to compete and you had to win to make money in the sport. And now you get people that are, you know, not even competing in the fitness industry that are making way more money than the guys that are at the top of the Olympia.
Yeah.
You know, you got the fitness models and everything else is completely different. Do you think that has anything to do with why we see less people, less titles now? I mean, Phil won, you know, what, 7?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think most people think that he's pretty much done. Do you think he's going to compete again?
Well, no, and it's not that he physically couldn't do it. I just think that, you know, there's a pecking order, and it's determined by variables outside of what's happening on stage. Mm-hmm. And you have your window, and then when your window closes, you can try to climb back through the window, but don't expect the same welcoming. You know what I'm saying? Like, in other words, if somebody comes through your front door, you welcome them in. But if that same person tries to come through your window, he's going to be met with resistance. Yeah, so I just think that he's in one of those type of situations, kind of like me, kind of like everyone. When you go through the sport, you have your time, and then they want to bring the next group of, you know, the next crowd in, and so that's where he's at. Right.
Do you think there's anybody out there right now, like a Rami or a Brandon, that could come back and do it? Because no one's ever left and then came, kind of like what you're talking about, with the exception of Jay.
Jay is the only person that came back
left
and won the title back.
Yeah, won it again. Do you
but
think...
it took him being the best we've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
If he had just came back a little better than the year before, he wouldn't won. In my honest opinion, and I'm probably biased, but Dexter looked better in 09 than he did in 08. Jay just nailed it, basically. Mm-hmm. And Dexter nailed it too. Like I said, that's the best. If you go back and look at all of Dexter's videos and pictures, his 09 Mr. Olympia was the best he ever looked. He just so happened to run into a Jay Cutler, and that was the best he ever looked, and a Branch Warren, that was the best Branch ever looked. So the judges picked who they wanted, which they wanted Jay even in 08. And so, you know, Dexter got the...
But do you think that we'll see Brandon or Rami come back?
Come back and win?
Yeah.
I mean, they both have the potential and capability. They would have to literally nail it, and then the other guys not nail it.
Yeah.
To be considered. Because if you see how they're judging them, they're not even letting them get close. They're, this past year they did move everybody into the middle, but not the top 5. It was just when they was just trying to stir the pot, basically.
Yeah. Buying time.
So how they line you up, and that's the thing about this, where they stand you on stage. If they stand you on the end in the dark, they don't let you in the middle, you're not in the running for first place.
Yeah, that was so weird how everybody, all the Ramy fans were talking about, oh, well, he's so clearly won. That's why they have him on the outside in 5th.
No. Well,
and everybody thought that. And I'm like, I don't, unless they're pulling some kind of weird WWE trickery, I don't think that's the way it's going to work. And of course that's not how it turned out. But do you think that, so we talk about Ramy and we talk about Brandon, and I'm inclined to agree with you. I feel like it's going to be difficult for them to come back, especially Ramy with some of the issues that he's had and all the negative talk about, the nerve damage or whatever people call it. I'm not going to say one way or the other, but, do you think that Hadi can have a multiple run, or do you think that people like Derek and Samson and now Andrew, since he's won the Texas Pro, do you think that they have the momentum to potentially overtake Hadi?
Potentially, yes. But I thought Hadi won a couple of times when he got 3rd or whatever. So the fact that he's now Mr. Olympia, if he nails it again, I don't see how
he doesn't seem to miss.
He doesn't miss.
He's Mr. Consistency for sure.
He doesn't miss. And, now that he's in the position that he's in, I see him improving. And so, have you seen anything on Hadi this whole time?
No, but he's kind of got that Dorian Yates, shadows kind of look, every now and then he'll post something and you don't know if it's from 5 years ago or from yesterday, but I don't, do you think he can improve? Can he put more muscle on that frame without ruining it?
He doesn't really need more muscle. You know what I'm saying? He just needs to polish what he has.
Yeah. Do you think he looked his best? Because in my opinion, and a lot of people think that, back long before he ever even made it to the Olympia, he looked better, right? There were periods of time when he was, I can't remember the Grand Prix, I think is when it was, when he was going against Flex. He should have definitely beat Flex over, was it Europe, or I can't remember where it was at. But anyways.
I don't remember what show either, but I remember.
Yeah. And I feel like if you put a picture from then to where he is now, I think he was better then. He just wasn't in the mix. So, you could probably make an argument that he was uncrowned, but the fact of the matter is you have to be at the Olympia standing there. But I almost feel as though, I know he's not old, but I just don't feel as though, I haven't seen him get necessarily better. He's just staying the same. And I see people like Derek just drastically improving and Samson drastically improving. So that's my question, is how much better can Hadi get, and how much more potential do people like Derek and Andrew and Samson have?
They have extreme potential. All 3 of them that you just mentioned has a lot of new muscle. Hadi doesn't have a lot of new muscle. Hadi's muscle, he's been like that for the last 4 or 5 years. And so that's how he can get better, because he has a better chance of walking on stage, nailing it, where they, like Samson.
Yeah, explain that to people, what new muscle is and how that works.
Well, it takes about 3 years for it to solidify. So in other words, let's just say you weigh 285, all right? And then you do a diuretic and then you weigh 260. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. All water being pulled out of your muscles.
Just water pulling. Yeah. I had a 17-pound swing. You know what I'm saying? I could be 261 this morning and then be 287.
Yeah, I'm the same way, and people don't believe me.
The next day or that same night. So it's just water going to where it wants to go. When you're that dry, it's like if you find a dry sponge under your sink and then you put it on the counter and drop some water on it, you'll just watch it expand in front of you. And that's kind of what's going on. You got the fully dehydrated body, all the body fat's gone. And now it's who can figure out how to get the water where it's supposed to go when it's supposed to be there. And I think Hadi has a better opportunity to do that just because he doesn't have a lot of new muscle. We saw Derek leading up to the show last year, and then he didn't look like that when he walked on stage. He was peeled, he looked great, but he didn't look like he did in his pre-show pictures. Same thing with Andrew, same thing with Samson. They look amazing, but you could tell that it's different than what you saw when they was all the way filled out and before they dropped the water.
So you think that's do you think that's more of the muscle issue, or do you think it's just they didn't quite peak? And then also this with Andrew and Samson, do you think that conditioning is an issue, and you see that more in people of African descent, the darker skinned people. Like their skin is almost thicker, as opposed to, you know, someone like Hottie, or then like more like a Scandinavian, like Caucasian people. They seem to have thinner skin. Do you think that plays a role in it? Because you see a lot of these guys, like, you know, like maybe Flex Wheeler or Sean Roden, or, you know, some of those guys were a little bit of anomalies, and then obviously a Phil Heath. But like some of these other guys, like, I don't know, like Lionel Baecki, or some of these guys that can't seem
Brandon
to get
Curry.
Brandon Curry is a perfect example. Yes, absolutely. Like can't quite get that last bit of like striated glutes or whatever. But I don't think it's for lack of effort that they're putting in.
Right. Well, it's how long you diet. Like, you know, I just think it takes longer. So in other words, somebody who has naturally thin skin, you know, it just doesn't take as long to get that thinness to it. You know, I used to, like I said, in 2008, I was dieting for 18 months. So in other words, I did 16 shows in 18 months.
Can we talk about why did you do that, and why do you think people don't do it now? Because that back then you did hear more people about doing it. You hear like Milos talk about it, about how they did the circuit and all that other kind of stuff. And like, you know, you did, I think one year, what you did 7, 6, 7, 8 shows.
The most I've ever done in a year was 11. Then I did 2 years where I did 9, and then.
So now anybody that doesn't really follow bodybuilding, it's more common to see somebody do one show, win, and then go to the Olympia, you know, or before they abolish the point system, do 2 or 3 shows and get the points. And then as soon as they get that qualification, shut it down for the rest of the year.
Right.
That's the strategy for people now, but it was completely different back in the 90s and earlier 2000s.
Well, if you really think about it, and in order to get better at something, you have to do it in repetition. And so my philosophy was name something that you can get better at without actually doing it. And the answer is nothing. Yeah. And so being a professional bodybuilder, I was just like, well, I want to be the best in the world. And I'm respecting the other guys who are the top 10 in the world as well. So I figure like I have to give myself as many chances as humanly possible. I didn't have the political backing to make me feel confident enough that all I had to do was look good for me, basically. I felt like I had to be way better than everyone just to even get looked at. And so I dieted longer. When I was working with Palumbo, we like literally stayed in the zone for a year or 2 straight. And I didn't have to go crazy. You know what I'm saying? Like once I got in shape, I just stayed in shape. I didn't have to like continually up the dosage or do any more cardio. Because when you stop, it stops. You see what I'm saying?
Do you think that's a part of genetics as well? Because I feel like a lot of people get tired when they do that. Like you see about some of the guys now, like, I don't know, Hassan comes to mind or something like that, like to where they're doing a lot of shows, but they just kind of look a little bit, their bodies look, I don't know how to explain it. Their bodies just look tired into the season.
Well, what you do in between the shows is what's going to determine, you know, how you recover. You know, very few people knew my regimen, but like I would compete at the Arnold. Let's just say I would do the Ironman, right? So I prep, you know, 25 weeks for the Ironman, and then we used to have the Sacramento a week later. So I would, you know, try to peak for the Ironman and then just look good the following week. So the year I won the Ironman in 2007, all I had to do was hold on to my conditioning for a week, and I did photo shoots and I stayed on my diet, so it wasn't that difficult. Then the Arnold was like 3 weeks later, where I got to go home and like kind of reset. But the key is, as soon as the show over, instead of going out to pig out and drink, you know, you just go right back to the program.
Yeah.
And usually your body, you end up having a what they call a pot, you know, like a clean rebound, and then you just stay in the game. So
what about the drugs? How much of a role did that play in it? Because we talk about, obviously, you know, performance enhancement drugs, things above therapeutic dosages, is obviously what a bodybuilder takes. You know, you're not going to get to the Mr. Olympia, maybe unless you're like a Ronnie Coleman on TRT or something like that. So like, what was it? You weren't. I'm assuming you maybe weren't taking as much, like compared to what you hear and see about today. Like, what is the differences between that?
I never did that. So basically, in say like the off season, you don't really need a lot of variety. You want to keep your test levels high, and your food and your nutrition is going to be the most important thing. Now, the things that like the Primo and the Mastrons and stuff like that make you harder or give you the visual, you only need a few weeks of those. Mm-hmm. So you do it for a few weeks, and then you can back off, and do it for a few weeks, and then you back off. So once I was not competing, it was I just kept my tests in and took everything else out.
And that, I guess, maybe allowed you to stay fresher, do you think? Or do you think it doesn't have anything to do with it?
No, to be honest with you, my regimen where I would go soon as the show's over. So the show's over on Sunday. Monday morning, I'm doing a colonic to rehydrate myself. I'm not trying to drink enough water and rehydrate. I do a colonic that rehydrated me, staying clean on the diet,
Sorry. Sorry.
So staying clean on the diet and just, like I say, planning it too. I wasn't randomly doing this. I had planned on, 6 shows in a row. They used to make us sign the contract, 6 weeks out. Mm-hmm. So once you sign the contract, you're locked in. So I remember 2008, I did Europa. I did Tampa, Europa, New Jersey, then the Olympia. So I had to turn in all 4 of those contracts, back in July before the and just so that just locks you in. So you just
was that something that your sponsors required you to do?
Or 08, I didn't have a sponsor.
Really?
Yeah. So I lost.
You were 5th at the Olympia and didn't have a sponsor.
Exactly. That's why I know if I had had a sponsor, I definitely would have placed higher. That's the year I really learned about the 800-pound gorilla called Muscle Tech. So they called me. I remember it was Monday morning or Tuesday morning after the show. Vince Scalisi called me and was like, "Mr. Freeman." And I was like, "Yo, what's up?" He was like, you just made me a fan of bodybuilding again. I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, I'm on the first row like I am every year for the Mr. Olympia, prepared to be bored out of my mind. And then you walk out there and blew everyone away. And we'd like to sign you to a contract. So that's when I signed with Muscle Tech. And then I learned.
I feel like everybody was with Muscle Tech back then.
Well, all the top guys, because like I say, they were the 800-pound gorilla.
A lot of money.
Yeah. And so that is, and if you notice, almost every winner back then was a Muscle Tech athlete.
Yeah. So what was that, a catch-22? Was that they were signing the winners, or was it that they were like? Because
both.
Now we're getting into politics.
It's both.
Yeah.
So in other words, if I'm spending $400,000, $500,000 on sponsoring the show, my guys are going to get a look. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So they still have
look,
to do the
maybe
work.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe not necessarily put somebody else over.
They still have to do the work. They still have to look good. But I'm saying you're going to look at these guys, and because some guys don't get looked at. In other words, I've been told before. I was told to not see you on stage. You know what I'm saying? And I'm just like, excuse me.
I'm 6'2". How do you not see me on stage?
If I'm standing next to Lee Priest and what's my man's name?
Lee Priest. Lee Priest, what, like 5'4"?
Yeah, he's like 4'5", 4'5", and David Henry.
Yeah.
So if I'm in between Lee Priest and David Henry, and Lee got first and David got second, how did you not see me? You know what I'm saying? So that's like I say, there's variables outside of the arena that make a difference. Now, what I will say is, since I've left the sport, I'm looking from a different perspective. I see that they're really trying to put the best person at the top. You know what I'm saying? So, number one, I don't think sponsors are paying like they used to. You know what I'm saying? So it's just more people to sponsor.
It doesn't seem like it.
So it's a little more spread out. Like I say, Muscle Tech used to put in almost all the prize money.
Well, there's 400,000 different supplement companies now. Everybody and their grandma's got a supplement company now. So I guess a lot of these smaller companies, that's why you're not getting you're getting ambassadorships and you're getting promo codes
totally
and
different
stuff
now.
Like that. Yeah.
Totally different now. So now, like I say, now they can just pick whoever's the best, which is, I'm happy for that, because that's what's going to drive the sport. But it just wasn't always like that.
So, like you said, you were maybe a little bit less on the gear when you were doing these things. You don't think that messed with your ability, or you don't think that helped with your ability to kind of continue doing these shows? But you got out in how old were you? Mid-40s when you got out?
I left. My last show, I was 49.
49. Oh, 49. Okay. Yeah. So you got in there a little bit. Do you think
I turned pro at 36 though? So that was part of the problem. Yeah. You know how they say your peak years are 29 to 35. Well, I was at home playing Madden during those years. After I tore my pec, I didn't even train for 4.5 years. So,
but you worked out, like you said, from a very young age. I feel like it's more along the lines of how long have you been working out and had like a base, like if you. A lot of the guys are getting in older now, but they haven't been training a lot. They haven't been training for a long period of time, and that probably has to do with like the new muscle that you're talking about. But I mean, I feel like you maybe had a lot more muscle stuck on you than the average 36-year-old by the time you turn pro. I feel like you being able to compete until you're 49 and you were still being competitive at the pro level, like that's saying a lot. But like at that point, you're a master. But I feel like a lot of guys now, like, Kai Green competed well into his 40s. Phil Heath competed well into his 40s. I think Samson Dowda's in his late 30s now.
Oh, well, like I say, they say that you peak in your early 30s, but, I peaked at about 45, 46.
Yeah.
42 to 46 is the best I've ever been.
Everybody's different. I mean, look, Dexter was... he was 49 too, I think. I think 50.
He retired at 48 because he's 51 now, I think, maybe 52. You know what? Dexter might be 53 now. I'm like 2 or 3 years older than him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So since we're talking about Dexter, we're talking about, competing in your 40s and 50s. What do you think about this Master Olympia that they're bringing back? Do you think that it's a good thing? Do you think that these guys getting back on after they've been off is unhealthy? Because there's a lot of talk about, it's like these guys are in their, late 40s or 50s and they're trying to put on more mass and like, how healthy is that going to be? Especially because we've had like a string of a lot of deaths in bodybuilding in the last 3 or 4 years.
I'm all for it. I'm curious to see how competitive it's going to be. When we did the Masters in 2011 and 12, we were all top 10 in the open. We were just old.
Yeah,
we're just old. So, I try not to judge it till I see it, because I know a bunch of guys doing this show, and I'm pretty sure they're gonna look good. But yeah, it is unhealthy. That's why I'm not doing it.
And that's what I was going to say. I mean, like, you're still in great shape, but you've tried to downsize. You've admittedly tried to downsize. Since you've stopped doing bodybuilding, and and I know you get your hormones checked, and I'm not sure what levels you're at or anything right now, but like I think are the type of person that can put on size really easily. So you could probably come back and do this show. Obviously, you're not.
I had to struggle with myself to not.
So you thought about doing it?
Well, I mean, I had to think about it. But the prize money wasn't enough to make me.
There's no prize money. Go
through any kind of drama. They're going to spend more than what they have a chance to make, which is idiotic. So, no, like I said earlier, when it's your time, do what you got to do. And when your time is past, you just got to humble yourself and then let the next crew go.
So why do you think the majority of these guys are doing it? Because it's probably not for money.
No, they probably need something to drive them. I actually am planning on going through a whole prep. In other words, be locked in for 6, 7, 8, 9 months. But I don't plan on getting on stage. I may guest pose or something like that.
Are you going to put on size though, or are you going to go more for like streamline?
I'm 235, and I want to be 235.
Okay.
So, but I'm 235 at about 12%. So I'd maybe get down to maybe 9%. I'm not going to get peeled. It's more of the journey and it's more of the regimen. I'm not going to take a bunch of contest stuff.
Yeah. You're not going to do diet. You're not do Lasix or anything like that.
I'm not even going to do none of that. Yeah. I may do a photo shoot or something.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is the journey is where it's at, so being consistent with your meals and your training and all that, whereas now I train casually. After 16 when I retired, because of what the condition I was in, I literally came off everything. I didn't do TRT or nothing until 4 months ago. I started back, so I've been off everything. And what I did was, my testosterone, everything was in the gutter.
Yeah,
and I started taking bull testicle and test boosters and stuff like that.
All the over the counter stuff.
I did.
Did you ever do like SARMs and all the?
Trust me, bro. I came through all the eras.
Yeah.
So everything new and all the
It's
experiments.
old.
And, you know, like everybody's doing peptides now, but I had peptides back in, you know what I'm saying? Like 2004, you know, when they was first coming out. Yeah. So, but that size, it would not serve me now. You know what I'm saying? I always tell people there's no big old people. There's no swole old people.
Yeah, you don't. And like, I feel like everybody talks about the drugs, and like, I'm a big believer that it is the size itself.
Yes.
That is what's killing these people, because I use the analogy of like, you got like, let's say you got a 1,500 square foot house, and you got an AC unit that's made to heat and cool 1,500 square feet. Well, then you turn the garage into a mother-in-law suite, and now you've got 2,000 square feet. Now you turn the porch into a sunroom or whatever. Now you got 2,500 square feet, and then let's say you add the upstairs, and then now you got a 3,000 square foot house that has an AC unit that was meant to heat and cool the 1,500 square foot house, and that's your heart is a heat AC unit. Of course, yeah, it'll work, but it's going to go out before it needs to, and it's going to have a lot more trouble heating and cooling that house.
It's definitely not going to be efficient.
Yeah.
You know, again, doesn't
matter if it's fat or muscle. Weight is weight.
It doesn't matter at all. As a matter of fact, muscle has more requirements than fat. So
oxygen for sure.
You're really, and that's oxygen is one of them. And that's the thing. It's really, like you said, you know, trying to put extra rooms on a house that's designed for. It makes me remember. I think that was 2008. I think it was 2008 when they was trying to pit me and Phil against each other, because Phil was up and coming and I was up and going. And so we started talking, and they asked me my opinion about Phil. I said, Phil is the man. I said, that's who they really want. And I was like, you know, he shouldn't try to just be as big as he can just because somebody else on the outside of him is pushing him towards that goal. And then they was like, what are you trying to say? I said, well, don't try to put an 8-bedroom house on a 4-bedroom frame. It just ain't going, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And his midsection is what ended up being his demise. You know, Phil turned pro at 213, and he looked unbeatable at 213. They said he was narrow, needed to gain size. So you figure, let's just say he puts on 25 pounds over the course of his career. That's still keeping him in the 230, 240 range. So there's no need for him to try to get up to 285, 290, 300 pounds, because that's just not going to serve him. And he already had a hernia issue. And so that ended up being his demise, just like Ronnie, just like Dorian. And so that's what I mean. So as you're trying to put on more muscle, you're eventually going to run out of room. And, you know, back in the day when Dorian was at Olympia, they just said, well, just make your shoulders wider. And that'll make up the difference from you having a bigger waist or whatever. But that's what, you know, to me, that's what, I won't use the word ruin the sport, but, you know, even Flex Wheeler tried to chase Dorian, which is ludicrous. You see what I'm saying? So,
yeah.
I just think, you know, the art of bodybuilding went away for a little while, and it became, you know, the freak show, Barnum and Bailey. Instead of IFBB, it was International Federation of Barnum and Bailey. It was just a freak show.
But I think with Sean winning, and with Phil too, like, I think it slowly moved back away from that, you know, from the mass monsters. Like, you still do have to be big, but you see people like, you know, Hassan Mustafa is another good example. Like, you know, he has all the muscle in the world, but, you know, he's gotten penalized, and he had a tough time winning a show because of his midsection. Yeah. And they've gone on record, like Steve Weinberg's gone on record and saying that, like, that's, you know, that's why we penalized you.
If you look at all the 80s and 90s and even early 2000 magazines, almost every physique in there was one that you would trade places with. And when it went away from that,
I don't know, wasn't it Jay said is like, nobody wants to fuck Jay Cutler. You know,
Jay actually was a good looking dude. He just was, you know, he got to the point where he was almost too big.
He got big because he's chasing Ronnie.
Yeah. They used to say Jay looked like Barney Rubble. You know, like a muscular Barney Rubble.
That's hilarious.
And because he's thick from head to toe.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know? But Jay is still, I'm about to say, Jay is an exception to the rule. His midsection didn't get out of whack. You know, he kept his balance, and it was just his time. You know, when he brought Phil to the table. Yeah. And like I say, Phil basically, I think Phil could have got 7, 8, 9, 10 Olympias if he had went a little slower. And it's only because he ended up beating himself. You know what I'm saying? He ended up allowing the other guys to catch up because everybody started focusing on the midsection. But if you didn't have the midsection to focus on, he would have just reigned supreme.
Talking about Jay, I think also he was such a big businessman. I think at that point he was kind of just ready to like, you know, he was so focused on his businesses, and I mean he's a great ambassador for the sport, and like, but you know I think at some point you realize like how many more times do I actually need to do this. And I feel like as you get older, if you're chasing that size, it happens to everybody. I mean, that's what happened with Phil with his umbilical hernia, right?
That's what I'm saying. That's what happened to Ronnie. That's what happened to Dorian. You know, Jay's problem was he had Ronnie Coleman in front of him. You know what I'm saying? And so, you know, again, that's why when I came along, I was, like I said, I went through these 3 eras. I just wanted to maintain what I came here with and for. You know, I mean, I didn't. You know, I ended up. I got up to 323, but I still had a 6-pack, and my stomach was still flat. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah, that's different. Abs don't count if you're skinny. Yeah, right?
I mean, I was like,
just like boobs don't count on a girl if they're fat.
Exactly. And so I just think everybody has their limits, and as a bodybuilder, you should see your limits before everybody else sees them because you're looking at yourself 24/7. So
yeah.
I just wanted to stay the X-Man. I didn't want to, you know, try to be 340, 350 just because everybody else was.
What a cool ass nickname too, man. Did you give yourself that nickname or did somebody else give it to you? Because like,
so I signed with VPX in 2003, and that's when like the X-Men was hot.
Oh yeah.
So I was like, I want to be the VPX man, and nobody would listen. And so after I won the Ironman, after I won the Ironman, because I had won the Europa in mid, you know, like August of 06, and then I did the Ironman in the Sacramento, and then so Steve hired me to do a few photo shoots. I ended up getting a couple covers, and he did the X-Man series. And then, of course, when people see it in print, it just sticks.
It was good because it was in, I think by that time, it was in the movies. Because before it was comic books. I grew up, reading the X-Men. And then in the 90s, they had a cartoon that came on. I'll never forget, it was on Fox on Saturdays. Yes. And I was obsessed with that cartoon.
Me too.
Yeah. And then moving forward, when the movies came out, I wasn't a big fan of the movies. At least not at first.
They didn't look like X-Men.
Yeah, they did. Now, when Deadpool, we're going to get on a whole different subject here, but since Deadpool's came out, he's kind of revived all those old characters, and the Deadpool series is doing great. And they're actually doing another movie in the new Deadpool. Hugh Jackman is coming back as Wolverine.
Oh, cool.
And he's going to have the yellow and blue outfit from the cartoon.
Oh, nice.
And I saw I'm excited about it. I'm like fanboying out on it.
I love that type of stuff. So.
But yeah, being like a kid that grew up and like watching that, like to have the nickname, the X-Men, like that's what I was asking. I was like, did you give yourself that nickname? Like, cause
like I say, I tried to.
Like you get like, what is
Nobody was listening.
The GIF, Phil Heath. Like, okay, that's cool. The Big Bad Wolf, you know, or, you know, what are all these other nicknames? You know, the Persian Wolf, Hottie. I'm trying to think of all these nicknames that people have, but like, no, in my opinion, that's definitely the best nickname that you could possibly have.
Thank you.
But so finishing up on the Masters, what would it take for you, monetarily wise, for you to be like, okay, yeah, I think I'm gonna jump into this?
So no amount of money. You know what I'm saying? So if they put up $1 million, I would highly consider it. The only way I would even approach is if I knew my body checked out. And so according to my blood work now, I feel like I could compete and be good. But I just don't have the desire. I know it's required to do that and be like that. And I just don't have the desire.
But you want to do a prep. You just don't. Is it the last couple weeks that you don't have the desire to push?
Well, what I mean, maybe I should clarify what I mean. I mean just the regimen, the journey. In other words, you're not going to, stick to everything just because. You have to have a reason. The reason why I stayed on point for 18 months is because I had a show to do. So in other words, it was a time and date and a goal, a set goal.
I totally understand.
Now as a about to be 57-year-old man, I don't have to take my shirt off ever if I don't want to. You know what I'm saying? So in order for me to go try to be 10% body fat, I need to mentally psych myself out for it. I'm just not gonna, I had to work to get to 12%. I was like walking around at 16.5, 17%, like a doughboy basically.
Yeah.
And I got tired of that, just looking at it in the mirror. So when I started back training, I remember the day I came over here and got my blood work done before I started my TRT. My testosterone was 560. which I can live like that.
It's not bad.
Off nothing.
Yeah, if you go to a regular doctor, they're going to be like, don't worry about it. You're fine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
which is why you should go to a specialist, guys. Celltech MD.
Exactly. But, so I'm not even afraid to say it right now. I'm literally doing 20 milligrams a day.
Just microdosing.
Yeah, 5, 6
that a
days
lot of people. So I'm doing the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm doing, I think, it's the smallest amount of sip, but it's about that a day. Whatever it equals
10
out.
units.
It equals out to about, I may be doing a little bit more than I think total a week. I'm doing about 200, maybe 250 milligrams is where I'm at now.
I think mine totals up to 140 if I do it 7 days, but I don't usually do it like 5 to 6 days. I load 1 ml and it's 250 mLs, and I just basically make that insulin syringe last all week. Oh, okay. So you use the same needle over and over. Yeah.
For a week. Yeah. The insulin with it, was so small, but I've just found that as opposed to doing it twice a week or as opposed to doing it once a week or whatever, I know a lot of people don't like pinning themselves, but an insulin needle you can't even feel. And I feel as though I'm more level.
You can feel that you're on it.
Yeah.
So when you blast, when you do, 2, 3, how many ever cc's, and you do that, once or twice a week or even 3 times a week, eventually you don't even feel like you're on anything. You know you are, but you don't feel like it.
Yeah.
When you microdose, I feel it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can't wait to get Dr. Lasada in here and talk about that, because I know there's some science behind it, and I know a lot more people are talking about it and doing it, but I don't really know the reasoning why. I just know the kind of bro science behind it. And it's also interesting because you hear more talks about like using cypionate for that, which typically you would think cypionate is like a once a week thing, and you're going to do like an enanthate or a propionate if you're doing more often shots. But they're saying that now if you do the microdosing, that's not the case. And I'm really interested in hearing about that. Have you learned anything about that yourself that you can share, or are you kind of the same boat as me?
I from doing it all the ways it is to be done.
Yeah. It's the bro science. It's like it's the empirical evidence.
So let's talk about bro science for a second. So bro science comes from you doing it and experiencing it and putting forth your
result. When I do it, it's bro science. When you do it, it's pro science, because you're a pro.
Well, when the other scientists who came up with the different esters to carry it in, they didn't do it.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like most of these scientists that we rely on to do all the studies, they're not participating. So they only have one perspective. It's almost like they have the book knowledge perspective, but they don't have the actual living it perspective.
And most of the people that they do the studies on are not professional bodybuilders.
Exactly. So I used to read the study, but I never followed the study or even expected the same study results, because those people aren't eating trained. Studies are usually a bunch of controlled variables. Real life, you don't get those.
A good study.
A good study.
Yeah.
So, when you do microdosing, if you just think about the logic in it, your natural testosterone production happens every single day. You're getting, 5 to maybe 25 milligrams. That's what's happening naturally. Well, mimicking that, your body's going to be, so because for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. So if I take 200 milligrams of test and my body is trying to keep me within a 10-to-1 ratio, I take 200 milligrams of test and my body's going to make that much estrogen to match it.
Yep.
If you're microdosing, that action reaction is minimized. So now when I take that 20 milligrams of test, my estrogen is not budging.
And you don't have to worry about taking aromatase inhibitors,
right?
Which is a lot of studies have been showing that's one of these things that's causing a lot of the injuries and issues, and then heart issues with a lot of these people too. Exactly. It's not the testosterone, it's the aromatase inhibitors. It's, it's making your ligaments brittle, it's causing cardiovascular respiratory endurance, damage and things like that. Your veins
more brittle and hard. That's exactly what happens when you high dose stuff. And if you really think about it, if you microdose cypionate, it supposedly has a 8 to 10 day half cycle, whatever. Well, now you're gonna go like this and then level off and stay there. Whereas opposed when you're doing it the other way, you're doing this all the whole time.
It's a very similar thought process, at least in my mind, as to why you want to eat 4 or 5, 6 meals a day as opposed to just eating once and spiking your insulin. because it's the same thing that happens with insulin. Obviously, you're just using the testosterone. Now, that's not to say that intermittent fasting can't be helpful and work to give your gut a break. But I mean, just as far as the insulin response itself, if you're taking in 3,000 calories once a day, you're going to get a much different response out of your system than if you're taking in 3,000 calories all day.
Right. 3,000 calories would be hard to do with clean food, but I see what you're saying.
Lots of be some good ribeyes with some ranch on your potato.
It's very hard to shove all of that into a 24-hour period. So, you know, like now I eat twice a day, maybe 4 times as much as I'm going to get. And that would be a post-workout shake and maybe another shake. But, you know, our digestive systems are designed to basically, it's like a 4 or 5 hour process to go from putting the food in your mouth till it's digested and assimilated. So us, you bumping it up 3 hours, you know, because that's what bodybuilders do. Yeah. That's going against your homeostasis. And that's going to cause insulin resistance, even if it's clean food, especially when you throw the HGH in there. So that's the type of stuff, as you get older, the longer you do it, you have to consider and worry about. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, giving your system a rest for sure. Do you think that that because you've had so much muscle and mass on you, you can get away with eating less and doing that, as opposed to maybe somebody that has difficulty putting muscle on? Because like you eating twice a day, that's about how much as I want to eat too, right? But I was always a hard gainer, but now once I've gotten up over 230 and the most I ever weighed was like 270, and like fairly lean, but not like not bodybuilder side, like lean, right? Like maybe 12% body fat, and I think that I have way less trouble maintaining, above 220, 230 now than when, 5-10 years ago when I started this. So like you just say, it's just time. Yep. But I don't know, like I feel like taking in 3,000 calories is a lot easier to do and maintain that weight than before. I felt like to maintain 235, 240, I was having to take in 6,000-7,000 calories. So do you think that that's just as you're getting older, or do you think it's the fact that you put a muscle on over size or over time? And about how much are you eating a day? Do you track your calories?
Oh yeah, I track my calories. So my goal was to get 300 grams of protein, 150 carbs, and 40 grams of fat. I actually hired, I don't know if you know who Wes Watson is, but I bought into his program because I like his mantra or whatever. And so he was like, T, do 300 grams of protein. I've been tracking my macros, trying to get 300 grams. Very hard to do without supplementation, as far as, and get it in, less than 4 meals. So I've been doing like 75 grams of protein from food a couple times a day. So that gets me almost there. And then I can have 1 or 2 shakes to try to, but it's like I say, I've been 200 grams, 240s, but I do that consistently. But the problem is I don't want to eat chicken all day. So when if you're trying to get 300 grams of protein and still stay less than 50 grams of fat, it's chicken and fish.
Yeah,
and
turkey. Whey protein, and, so then, and then the lean turkey too. Like which 99. If anybody has ever had 99% ground turkey, it's basically cardboard.
Right. So I can't. Yeah. I mean, I could. Well, that's not sustainable. In other words, I can do it.
300 grams of protein is still a lot for you right now, and 150 grams of carbs not that much.
I wasn't even doing 300 grams when I was competing.
Yeah,
I was in the 250 range.
So what is your thought process behind that now?
Well, I mean, again, that was somebody else suggesting, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try that, but it just doesn't work for me. Number one, I like, bison, grass-fed beef, salmon that has high fat content. So, I eat 10 ounces of bison, that's 20 grams of fat. So if I eat that twice a day, then I'm done as far as fat goes. And so that means, what I'm saying? Like, I'm just not doing
just having egg whites and
I'm not doing the
rice
egg
cakes.
Whites, the white chicken, the white fish. That's what we did as bodybuilders. And I didn't really talk about that, but that's kind of the problem as well. Because as a bodybuilder, you're eating clean fuel. In other words, chicken breasts, white fish, white rice, white potatoes. Where's your macros?
Yeah.
Your macros is on point, but where's your micros? And so that's what happens to us over time. And that's why doing so many shows, and I learned this, that's why so many shows is not good for you. Not because you're of the gear is because you're going 6, 8, 10 months with no micronutrients. It's just all macros.
Yeah,
I mean,
gut
that
gets
little
destroyed.
vitamin pill ain't gonna cut it.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of people, I try to harp that on my people. They're like, what kind of vitamins should I have, this and that or whatever. And I try to tell them, like, look, like supplements, the word supplement comes from supplemental. Like it's supposed to be in addition to. You should try and get everything that you can from food that you possibly can. Like you get more vitamin C from eating one orange than you do from taking 20,000 milligrams of a vitamin C capsule.
Exactly.
And that's even if you get
usable,
a good one.
bioavailable.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I mean, if you buy it from Walmart, let's not even talk about it because
Right.
there's literally no vitamin C in it at all. It's a scam. And that's a fact. Like there's been studies that have shown that. Which that's a whole nother conversation.
Well, ascorbic acid is only a fraction of vitamin C. So if you're not taking in whole food vitamin C with all the bioflavonoids and all that, it's not absorbing anyway.
Yeah. And it's the same with all the other vitamins as well. It's not just, I'm just using vitamin C as an example. So yeah, I mean, definitely getting your real food in there. And then, most bodybuilding programs are going to be fairly generic and basic. You got your chicken, your rice, or hopefully if a coach is good, he's going to give you some leafy greens or some vegetables or something like that. You got your egg whites, you got your oatmeal, you got maybe your top sirloin if you're lucky, lots of whitefish, stuff like that. And then, asparagus, maybe some grapefruit, but like that's the kind of the broad and the narrow of most bodybuilding prep cycles.
I literally ate 10 to 15 cups of greens every single day and I still was deficient.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like that freaking blew my mind. I was almost upset. I'm just like, this doctor's telling me, dude, you're malnourished. You're missing several. Like I've done all kinds of testing, and I had gotten to the point where I had no minerals and no omegas in my body. Like in other words, they were measuring at the lowest possible range.
But didn't you have a parasite?
Yeah, that's when I found all this stuff out, and that's what I'm saying. And I will tell you this: almost every single person that's listening to us, they have parasites too.
Yeah.
They might, it's a range. It might be minimal, but as a mammal, we all have parasites.
Yeah.
And so when you travel the world and you eat, 6, 7, 8 meals a day, you are exposing yourself to way more than the average person.
Yeah.
And so, that's what happened. So I had parasites that was taking my nutrients. Plus I was doing 6, 7, 8 shows a year, and I was on point with my nutrition, man. I was pounding the greens because I was only doing 50 grams of carbs a day, fibrous. It was all fibrous carbs. I had no starch except for one day a week. Sunday I would have 400, try to get 400 grams. I never was able to do it, but I was allowed 400 grams every Sunday. But the rest of the week was all
blows my mind that
greens.
you were that low and you're able to stay like full and round. Because most people like in bodybuilding terms, again, if you're not really a huge bodybuilding fan, you say things like flat and full and all these other kind of things. Like when you don't take carbohydrates into your body, like that's the shuttle, like carbohydrates, sodium, and water, kind of like this matrix, this axis that comes in, and that's what fills your muscles up. It's like 70% of your muscles. So if you don't have that glycogen in your body will make it from fat and other things that you're in your system, but it does it at a metabolic cost, and you still end up looking flat and basically flabby, like smaller. But like to hear that you were that low and still round, like that's genetics.
Other people that used to work with Dave used to call me and was like, "You still working with Dave?" I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "How the hell are you so full and round?" I'm like, "Well, I'm super efficient at this time." And so a lot of people, they may or may not know it, but when your body's fat adaptive, it's going to take the fat that you eat and the fat that's on your body and convert it into ketones, fatty acids, glycerol,
glyconeogenesis.
And so gluconeogenesis, that glycerol, right, takes the place of glycogen inside your muscle. So when I eat that 400 grams once a week, my liver's topped off, and then the rest goes to my muscles. And so the rest of the week, my body's running off of fat anyway. So that's why I never went flat, because I would make sure I filled myself up. And since my body wasn't really using glycogen, it just was enough to get me to the next point. And it was crazy. It was very scientific. I say, you can't go back and forth. Once you commit to that, you got to be on that. Because if you don't, you'll screw yourself up.
I will tell you that I had one show that I did that I was way behind that I switched coaches to, and I ended up looking very good at the show. But I did basically what you're talking about. It was basically white fish and green beans for every meal, and I was on probably about that, and I did not look round and full.
Well,
I looked like I didn't even work out.
So white fish, green beans, and every time you eat, add 2 tablespoons of olive oil.
Yeah. So now I would have. There was one meal with salmon, right? So I was getting a little bit of fat, and then I did have. I believe there was some coconut oil in one of them. I'd have to go back and look at my notes or whatever that I did. But yeah, so there's only 2 meals that really had any fat in it at all. And it was just, I was way behind. I mean, I lost 55 pounds in 7.5 weeks getting ready for a show. I was 270, and on stage I was 215, I think. So, I mean, it was, but I will say this, once I refilled up, I mean, you know, the moment I got a spoonful of rice in my system, I looked like I gained 30 pounds.
So in 07, I had 4, maybe 6 cups of rice total for the carb up. And I had to spread it out over a 2-day period. Because that first day, my stomach looked like I was pregnant.
Yeah.
I was like, my body was like, I don't want no carbs. Get that shit out of here. But it took about, 48 hours for it to settle in. And I ended up nailing it. I ended up nailing it at that show too. Not as significant as I did at the Olympia in 08.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome, man. It's really fun to sit here and talk about this, you know, at someone that's done it at such a high level, because it's something that I did as a hobby, and I was never really that good at it, but I enjoyed it. I loved it. And, you know, most people listening know like my background, but I competed in strength sports. I did weightlifting, powerlifting, fought MMA, I did CrossFit for a little bit. And then when I found out about my broken back and then my broken neck, I realized like I need to like take a step back, and I can't do like the snatch, clean and jerk and all these others. So what can I do? I'm like, well, I can do machines. I can still do hack squats. I can still do leg extensions. I can still, you know, I can use these machines. And so that's when I got into bodybuilding. That's why I got in so late. But I fell in love with that more than anything else, even though it was I was definitely the least good at it compared to like weightlifting or anything.
You had
else.
the work ethic and the passion.
So yeah, well, I mean, I definitely I've just always, the gym's always been my therapy. It's cheaper than a therapist, right? Is what I say. But it's really cool to sit here and talk to somebody, you know, in person that's kind of been through that process and hear how similar your process was to somebody's like mine at such like a lower level, and you were literally at the highest level that there is. It's kind of neat. It kind of gives you that like that I don't know if it just confidence in saying like, okay, like, yeah, it just wasn't in the cards for me, right, so to speak.
Everybody has their journey. You know, I became totally, you know, obsessed. I tell people, you start from you're inspired, then you're motivated, then you dedicated and committed, then you get to obsession, and then possession. Like when you know what I'm saying, like when you get to beast mode, it's you plus whatever it is that's done attached itself to you to push you to those limits, because that's a real thing. I think it's something that almost takes over to make you enjoy the suffering. And you know what I'm saying, like the stuff that we used to do to ourselves to get like that. And you know, behind the closed doors, I remember when Rami won. And I interviewed him. He said I had to go to this really dark place. You know what I'm saying? Like that's a thing. And you know, because it's an internal, almost a spiritual type situation going on the inside. It's kind of crazy.
It is. It's weird how that happens, because I feel like it happens at every level. Because I felt that on my first show. Yeah. And I mean, the very first time I ever stepped on stage, I felt that. And like, it's a very emotional state. And I don't know if it's the drugs, it's being depleted. It's just a combination of everything. It's knowing like, you know, you've worked on this for 12, 14, 16, however many weeks. And, you know, to this one goal. And then it's all kind of finally realized, rather if you did good or not. And like everybody, it's always interesting to see when somebody does win a show, their reaction, right? Because like Rami is really good at, you know, he does the, you know, he falls down on his knees and this and that. And then you have like, you know, Ronnie was, you know, crying, you know, and then, you know, everybody has, you know, you got some people when they win, they're just like, you know, they're like, you know, they're good, you know, all excited. And it's, everybody has different emotions, but they're all very intense.
Yeah. Well, it's because you, in that moment, you know, all the mornings and the late nights and the meals and the cardios and all, you know, all that stuff kind of hits you like in a wave of emotion. it's the same for the person that doesn't win too.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because you did just as much shit as that person did. You know what I'm saying? So
hopefully.
it's just yeah. Well, hopefully, yeah, and hopefully you didn't do even more than that person and didn't win.
Yeah.
So that's the case a lot of times too. So it's just it's like I say, you peak and you're crescendoing into that moment. And then for me, I always had another show next week, so my celebrations was really short.
Yeah, I feel like once you do it more, you probably just kind of got used to it. Like, it's
because
just
now
business.
it's almost
just
like
another day of the office.
like Alexander the Great. He was sad when he ran out of shit to conquer. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so you just get ready for the next battle.
Well, did you get to the point to where you weren't really worried about winning or losing? You were just doing these shows as a competitive, or did it bother you? Because like I want to talk about Hunter, because Hunter's going to the Olympia, right? Mm-hmm. He looked fantastic these last two shows. He's definitely Hunter Labrada. For anybody, it's the son of Lee Labrada. He's definitely made his comeback from his less than stellar performance at the Olympia last year. Mm-hmm. He still looked great. Last year's Olympia was just very, very competitive, right? Mm-hmm. But he did drop down quite a bit from, I think he was like 4th to 7th or something like that. And but he came back. He looked fantastic at the was it the Tampa Pro? Mm-hmm. And then now, which he won.
Did he get second this week?
This Texas he lost to Andrew Jack, and that's what I want to talk about. So like, do you think there's such thing as momentum? Because everybody was talking about Hunter. Was he going to bring it? And he did bring it in Tampa. But now he's lost to Andrew, who he beat at last year's Olympia. And they both are better than they were.
He didn't place ahead of Andrew, did he?
Yeah, he was 7th and Andrew was, I believe, 8th.
No. Not the year before, maybe.
This past Olympia. Well, this was Andrew's first Olympia debut was like this past year.
I thought Andrew got like 4th or 5th.
No. You're thinking of Samson. Samson got 5th behind Brandon and Rami.
So Andrew got 8th? Oh, wow.
Andrew got 8th. I think it was 8th. It may have been 9th or 10th, but he was outside of the first call out.
Okay.
But
he was in the last call out. That's why I was kind of confused.
Yeah, well, he improved so much.
Really tell you. You had to go look and see who placed after 6.
After that, yeah, you're right. Yeah. So, but I remember because there's some smack talkings going on in the press conference or whatever, and with him and I think Ian Valliere and stuff like that. Which Ian dropped down this past year too. He was 7th the last couple of years, But they both, Andrew and Hunter, improved tremendously from their Olympia showing. But I think the question was Andrew going to improve more than Hunter to come back and kind of like reclaim that? And as it comes out, it did. Like, I know you saw the pictures. We were looking at them.
Yeah.
What's your honest opinion of Hunter versus Andrew? Do you think that they were at their best that you've seen them at? And where do you think they're going to have, or where do you think they're going to be this year at the Olympia with the momentum that they have now?
Well, I didn't get to see. I just saw one photo of them standing next to each other, and it was, during the the trophy presentation. Mm-hmm. So, not like I had to go back and watch the comparisons and all that. I think Andrew's just a better bodybuilder structurally and genetically. So, if they both nail it, I think Andrew will get the edge. So I'm a Hunter fan. I remember watching Lee bring Hunter on stage back in the day when he was first born. So kind of like, that's like my nephew or something. But like I say, Andrew just put together a little better. He doesn't have the pec tear. I have a pec tear, so I'm not knocking Hunter. I'm just saying, like, when you get to this level, it's all about what's not right, because everybody looks amazing. Yeah. I truly believe that anybody in the top 15 Mr. Olympia is 95 to 99% Mr. Olympia anyway. You know what I mean? You're missing the check and the sandal, but you wouldn't even be up there if you weren't in the running for it. So anyway, I just think, I'm hoping the sport returns to quality first, popularity and all that other stuff second. Like I say, because there's not a 800-pound gorilla anymore, it's more even as far as outside influence. So that's allowing the athletes to dictate how they place more. You know what I'm saying? Where before, if you run up against an 800-pound gorilla, you get whatever's left. You see what I'm saying? I think now it's just a more even playing field. Not 100% even, but more even than it used to be. Gotcha. I mean, when you got, Hani training all the top people in the Olympia. Plus now he has a supplement company. You know what I'm saying? Like he's just gonna have that pull. So these guys would have to literally fuck up to not win.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Toney, thank you so much for coming out. Apologize, we've had some technical difficulties with the videos here, but we're going to get that fixed. But it's been an awesome podcast, and we're definitely going to have you in for part 2.
Yep.
And maybe even do like a little Olympia, prediction recap when we get a little bit closer.
Yeah, I'll do my homework and check everybody out. I follow the sport. I'm not a fanatic about it.
Yeah.
These guys look great. Coming from the eras that I came from, I'm all about the quality. So when I see them big, I'm impressed, but I'm not overly impressed until you could actually bring it to the stage and control it while you're on stage as well.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. And Hunter definitely looked like he was having a little bit more trouble controlling it. Andrew, I saw the pose by pose, and he just looked so calm and collected, and he looked a lot more comfortable up there. So, well, guys, where can they find you on social media?
Instagram, TFXman305, Facebook, Xman Toney Freeman. You can just Google Toney Freeman. I will give my phone number out, but
don't do that. No, just
DM me on Instagram or Facebook Messenger or something like that.
Awesome, man. Well, as always, guys, thank you so much. Make sure you check out thegymgypsy.com. Make sure you check out Celltech MD. They are a sponsor. Without them, we would not be doing this right now. And we're going to see you guys next time on Down the Road. Have a good one.